Washington football. Woo! Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Burgundy Zone. I am your host, Kyle. I will be joined by my co-host here soon enough. But to join me on this Sunday afternoon, Memorial Day weekend, the title of tonight's episode is The Hard Knocks Life, is Mr. Anthony Armstrong, former wide receiver of the Redskins. Thank you for blessing me on this Sunday, sir. How you doing?
I'm doing well, man. The weather is nice. I'm up here in the DMV reporting live. What you just said, it was Ravens country being at Laurel, Maryland, but I'm not claiming it as Ravens country. I'm gonna say that it's Redskins country first, and then we'll go everywhere after that. So yeah, everything's good. The weather's nice. I'm enjoying this Memorial Day weekend. How about yourself?
Yeah, I would like to say it's a closeted Redskins country in Laurel, Maryland. It's just because of winning. That's all it is, Anthony. Just
Fair enough. I get it. I get it.
But because this being Memorial Day weekend, but the title of the episode obviously is Hard Knocks Life. And so Washington and the NFC East got selected to be in Hard Knocks in season. It's going to be debuting in December, which is perfect time because that's when the gauntlet of the bottom half of the schedule for Washington comes out, where it's against the Eagles, against the Cowboys, against the Giants as well. What was your immediate reaction to that? And I'll have a follow-up for you after.
Media reaction was like, "Oh snap!" I kind of thought it was a prank, really, but like to see that you're in Hard Knocks. I'm not a huge fan of being on Hard Knocks, but the in-season version one could be a little different, could be interesting. But like you mentioned, that the gauntlet going against just everybody in December, Lordy. I mean, golly, that's tough. That adds that much more cinematic drama to this whole setting and to this whole thing. Well played, NFL. Well played.
Yeah, and I will say it's much better than the Jerry Jones documentary that Netflix announced a while ago. I'm glad that they actually going where it's supposed to be going, Anthony. But my follow up to that is I understand what you're saying by that because Hard Knocks could be an issue if you're talking about the training camp early season kind of Hard Knocks because everyone knew coming on board kind of a distraction, the cameras and everything like that, the kind of circus that comes with it. But for me personally, I find it such a great thing for it to be in season because by then, Anthony, you know this well. You're already in your repetition, like you already have gone through the whole season. There's not much change except for the fact that there are cameras there, but it's very different than it is in the off season. So I wanted to ask you, what are the positives and negatives of the Hard Knocks?
I'm going to start with the negatives, and I
Okay.
generally would start with the positive. I think the negatives would be just that fact of is that last change of what would be normal, right? The
Mm.
normalcy of going to your meetings and doing your things. Now you're like, hey, what's that little thing on the wall? Oh, it's a camera, and now it's following us in the meeting room. Is that going to get people off their game? Is that going to change the way guys prepare? Is it going to make them a little bit more nervous? You're already preparing for your tough opponents in Dallas and Philly and New York, but then now you got an extra camera that's watching you. I do love the fact that you're not the positive side. It's not tied around players getting cut. Right. So you don't have to sit there and see them follow one particular player and say, oh, this guy's going to be on his way out of here. But I also think that another positive could be that, hey, everybody has to deal with it. It's not just one team, it's the entire division. And I mean, I think it's safe to say 3 out of 4 of these teams will really be in some playoff contention and looking to do something in the offseason. So the positive is that everybody got to deal with it, and who can handle that pressure better is going to prevail at the end of this.
Yeah, Anthony, like try to put yourself in that position, being in the meeting rooms, because the meeting rooms being so much different, obviously now, but like if there were cameras on the wall, you being a player, if there was a question that you had for the coaches or you wanted to make a point, would you be more reluctant to make that question because the cameras are there?
Yeah, I can see that being a thing, but hopefully in December that isn't an issue,
Right.
right? At that point it's game plan stuff. It's specific, and you got to respect the show. They're not going to try to release any information, but they're going to show it on Tuesdays, so it's going to be after the game. So it'll be cool to see like what went on in preparation for. But as it is right now, man, it wouldn't keep me from asking a question. Now, if it was in that training camp one, I'd be like, why are these cameras following me? I'm not Terry McLaurin. That must mean y'all about done with me. So it'd be that one. That's the one that would have me nervous, you
Right.
know. But in the season, man, it's just like, all right, cool. Cameras are there. They're gonna be respectful of us and our space. Let them do their job, and then you just kind of go about it the way it is. I mean, the biggest focus is playing those games on Sundays or Thursdays, and the fact of that Christmas game. But that's the biggest focus. I need to be focused on that more than anything, rather than worrying about a camera crew.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. NFL.com came out with a underrated player for each NFL team. NFL agreed with me in selecting Quan Martin for their underrated player on Washington, most underrated player, and I totally agree with them. Obviously, what would you say to that? Is there anybody else that comes to mind for you?
Man, I like Quan. I like his versatility that he brings, and he's been able to make some impact on the field. I'm excited to see how his role grows. Other underrated players, man. I don't know. I mean, sometimes you feel like Terry's underrated. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? Like they underrate him. Now he's getting some love as of late because he got a quarterback that's getting him the rock. But I still think he's underrated. I still think he's somebody that deserves much more praise. I think he's also fine if he's not getting a whole bunch of it because it keeps a little chip on his shoulder. I think the way Zach Ertz played last year it would make him another underrated player that you're thinking,
good one.
hey man, maybe he's still got a couple more years in him. Just because he was such a safety blanket for Jaden and was really, a stable piece of that offense. He has a lot of value for this team. So there'll be a couple of guys that I think would be underrated. Also, we're going on offensive line. Let's talk about Tyler Biadasz.
Yeah,
Right, he comes in from Dallas, and which was a much maligned offensive line, and now the first season with him in there, and then that new crew, they did a pretty good job. And I think his leadership and being able to communicate with those guards and working with Cosme and Allegretti had to have been a huge impact. So those would be my three. I think I'd go with.
those are very good ones. Tyler Badass himself and Dan Quinn over the weekend went to his alma mater, Salisbury University. Was given an honorary degree by him and his wife for at Salisbury, and he did the commencement speech to the graduating students. So I'm going to pose this question to you, Anthony. What is your superpower? Which is one quote that he talked to the kids and saying, "Find your superpower." And then off of that, I'll ask you the second question after. But what is your superpower?
Man, I tell you, if you're talking physically superpower, we're not gonna just say handsome. We're not gonna go there. We'll we'll talk obviously speed, right? I'm a fast guy. 4.2, that was what I ran. I could get down, but that was my superpower when I was playing. But I think my superpower now is being able to connect with people and being able to sit down and regardless of where you're from, I can have a conversation with you and I want to hear your story, and that helps me connect with folks and we can build a level of trust and build a relationship. So that's my superpower.
My man. And my follow up question is going to be a tough one for you because I'm putting you on the spot. But I know that you're a motivational speaker and you do a very good job at it. Like you found your superpower. So if they gave you the opportunity to talk to the team in a sort of similar stance as Dan Quinn did to the Salisbury graduates, what would you say to the team?
Man, my message to the team, well, first and foremost, I'm going to congratulate them for the year they had last year. Start out with that because you got to give some praise and got to give some love for that. But then I'm also going to sit there and tear the paper. I'm tearing that page off and I'm going to give them a brand new book because last year don't matter no more. All
Mm,
right, you were 12-4 NFC Championship. People are up in Philly are just continuing to talk about the 55 to whatever the score was. That's what they're dwelling on. We can't focus on that anymore. We're focused on what's ahead and how can we get better. Coming into this season, you got the target on your back, right? And Laramie Tunsil, you got to take that. You got to take that pressure of knowing you got the best quarterback, the best young quarterback in this league. You got to keep him upright. Debo Samuel, you're brought here to make plays. You gotta be on your game. Everybody has to step up. You're not here just to fill a roster position. And understanding that you have the opportunity to do something special and it's all in your hands, it's all there in front of you. And what you do with it day one, day two, and how it compounds, That's what's going to determine where you at the end of the season. So just take it one day at a time, keep chopping wood, and you'll be able to raise a trophy at the end of the year.
My man, what would you say to the UDFAs on the team if you could personally talk to them?
Man, take advantage of every single opportunity. Because I mean, I was just thinking, my first time in Odessa, we had two field goal units going, one kicker, one holder, and they had to switch every time. And the coach said, I need a kicker, I need a holder, I need somebody else to hold so it would go faster, right?
Mm,
I sprinted out there. Had I ever held a kick before? Nope. Have I done anything special teams wise like that? Nope. But I figured it was a 5 yard hitch. The guy was throwing it between his legs. I'll do it. And having that type of mentality as an undrafted free agent, I don't care if you were the top dog. I don't care what the name is on the back of your jersey. You are an undrafted free agent. You don't have a logo on your helmet. You will be out of here in a minute. All right. It's not fair. It's not fair. You mess up on a route, you're cut. Right? Terry mess up on a route, they're gonna say, "Hey man, get it right," and they're gonna put him back in the huddle. So don't go in there thinking it's got to be fair. Don't think it's gonna be even, because you got to get it out the mud, man. You got to get it out the mud. If it's a backside run play, you better run like it's your first rep and you trying to go score a touchdown. Every single play has to be serious because that's what this game calls for, and that's what this team needs.
Honestly, Anthony, motivational speaking is just so on point at this point. You could almost attribute that to a lot of life in any sort of occupation, right? Having that sort of attitude and saying,
Absolutely,
yeah, learning different things to be able to just to help out and to go a long way.
absolutely,
Question I
absolutely.
have for this is something I've been pondering because for me personally, I find it very, oh, I find it a big waste of time when people will post pictures of NFL players, especially Jaden Daniels, bulking up in his muscles and his arms. Find that very, I don't know, I just find grown men just very weird doing it. But as a quarterback, though, I can't think of one jacked quarterback that was successful. But that being said, I understand from Jaden Daniels' standpoint of needing to bulk up based on his thinner frame, a lot like me, right? Where you want to have more strength in embracing those hits at all. What is your thought on the bulking up and the benefits of it and the negatives?
I mean, shoot, you bulk up because you know that it's gonna be a battle, right? I mean, you're not saying he's gonna run the ball more, but
Right.
as many times as he ran it last year, I ain't mad at him having an extra about 5, 10 pounds of muscle on him,
Right.
right? You got to have a little bit more armor. Um, Now you talk about being a jacked up quarterback. He's not, I don't think he's a muscle bound bodybuilder. He's not that type of dude.
Mm,
You know what I mean? The way that he prepares, it's about finesse. He's shooting the hoops. He's putting his, finger hands in the cookie jar when he's warming up. Like he's going to keep that flexibility and mobility. But having that extra strength and that extra muscle, it's just that little bit more that's going to help you get through it. I mean, he's not blessed with the 6'5", 250 like Cam Newton.
right.
Right? You're not blessed with that. You're blessed with, a little bit slighter frame. You got some wiggle about you. Now, when you're in the league, you see these big dogs trying to get a hold of you. Got to put on a couple of pounds just to be able to make it through the season. So I'm glad to see it. Now, the ones where the people are making it a little bit too big, they're tweaking it, making him look like the Hulk. It's kind of funny. But hey, man, I'm glad to see from last year we were talking about people being too thin and like, man, look at the, scrawny. But
Right.
then now you see this guy actually putting in some work, and shout out to that strength staff. I mean, I know Chad Englehart, he's been there for years. Way back in my days, he was there. He's one of the lone folks that are still remaining. And, he's going to do a good job by Jaden and by that team, have them prepared physically so they can show up and show out.
Yeah, definitely showing Englehart his ability to be able to do his job well, to not only be able to withstand the storm that was there to the previous regime, but also maintaining it after the changeover. And not that just shows how good he is. But
Yeah.
Anthony, to wrap this up, only a couple more questions for you, brother. I wanted to ask you, second year player that you'll think that will take the biggest step this season.
Man, I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna aim on those later round draft picks. Thinking of like a Javante Jean Baptiste or
Okay.
Jordan McGee. Interested to see what Ben Sinnott does in year two, because I think a lot of those other draft picks from previous last season, those later ones, or they're guys that are kind of learning their positions and they're learning how to play those spots. And now after having a year being behind the greats of Bobby Wagner and watching, Dante Fowler and Dorrance Armstrong and everybody work, now they can see what does it take. Jordan McGee had those injuries, but they loved him coming in.
Right.
And if he's healthy, and he stays healthy, you got to think he's going to be able to make an impact and kind of get a spell for Bobby from time to time. So I'm interested to see how those guys really develop, especially since the team didn't address a lot on defense, especially across that front. But I think they must know that they have something in those young guys and JJ B and McGee and maybe even Dominique Hampton. You never know, right? There's a way to just kind of make a splash when you're in your second year and you realize, okay, I survived the first year. I didn't get cut. Like it was kind of scary, but I enjoyed it. Now year two, you can relax. You can play fast first rather than have to think so much. So give me those three right there, man.
And it says a lot to what Adam Peters and the way that they built a team, because whenever you do try to replenish and from a previous regime, you might be almost forced to play those later round guys because you're trying to do that rotating of the players and whole situation. Whereas they built it to where those younger guys in the back end wouldn't actually have to start right away. They can actually learn and develop. Was a very, very smart way to go about it. My next question for you, since this is Memorial Day weekend, I'm a big movie guy. What would you say is your favorite movie? War movie, military movie?
Yeah, you mentioned you said beforehand, you said Major Payne, and that had me giggling because I love Major Payne. I can't hit you. Oh, that was a good one, man. Toot toot. That's a good one. But the one I had on my head was Inglorious Bastards.
Oh wow,
It's a war-ish movie. It's war era,
yeah,
right? I mean, I've seen the Saving Private Ryan. It's been years, but I loved Inglorious Bastards, and it's just so funny. It's got a lot of humor in there. And then being from Dallas and watching Dirk play when
mm,
they did the scene with the three,
mm,
he's holding up the fingers like that whenever he orders, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you're not a real German.
mm,
Germans do it like this." I knew that because of Dirk Nowitzki,
yeah.
So I love Inglorious Bastard. That's a funny movie for me. A lot of action and Major Payne, man. That's a classic. What about you? What you got?
That's one of the most stressful situations in that room. I'm sure there are a lot of people out there who have been behind enemy lines incognito and would understand what it's like in that sort of situation. For me, I'd have to go with like The Patriot is one of my favorites. Everyone knows Band of Brothers is one of my. I've read the books and really fascinated by Major Dick Winters and all the guys of Easy Company and what they were able to do. A lot of those guys were volunteers, not just sent in through the draft. And it just speaks a lot to because my grandfather served in the 10th Mountain Division, which is very similar to a guest that we have coming on with Steve Lim. And those guys trained in the mountains skiing, and a lot of those guys ended up retiring and starting a lot of the ski resorts around the country. So, of course, everyone's going to say Saving Private Ryan and everything like that. But I think The Patriot is one of those that going back, you could really look at to say, like, just what a crazy situation that was and who really helped build this country, so to speak,
Yeah.
Anthony.
I'll have to check that out. I mean, I'm big on saluting service, and then shout out to everybody and your grandfather and Steve and anybody that served. It takes a lot of sacrifice. One of my best friends, he sacrificed. He had two young kids, and he's like, man, I got to go join the army so I could set my kids up for better life. And he went over there and served and had a deployment, and it's a huge sacrifice. We get to just play a game, run around on Sundays and bring cheer to everybody's eyes and hearts, and especially when there's W's. But ultimately, we know that what the ultimate sacrifice is, and definitely appreciative for that.
Absolutely. And I know the survivor's guilt is definitely a thing among, and so I know tomorrow is not going to be as easy on others as it is on us enjoying this holiday. But just remember that, everything, God, the way that everything is playing out for a reason, and there's no
Yeah.
reason to second guess it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Last
no,
question.
that's the truth. That's the truth. I mean, I'll speak on that. That's the truth because if you're still here, you're here to share a story,
Right.
right? You're here to carry on a message or a lesson that you've learned from somebody that you knew. Maybe you lost somebody in your company, and you don't lose their name in vain. There's a part of them that's with you, and you
Yeah.
get to take that on and carry on maybe the bright points, one or two things that they used to take, this funny ass joke that they had. Share that joke, right? Put those moments out there, and share it with the world, because I know I like to hear people's stories every time I meet somebody. Like I go hop in an Uber. I'm talking to you for 30 minutes. Well, actually, they're talking to me for 30 minutes because I'm trying to learn about them. So share those stories. Don't let those memories pass, and honor those individuals that have passed.
Have you seen We Were Soldiers?
I have not, man. With these kids, I have not seen a whole bunch of movies. I need to guy kind of
Okay.
circle back around and catch them. But the Patriot, and then you say We Were Soldiers.
Yes, that one's based on the first conflict with the Vietnamese in the
Okay,
Vietnam War, and it's about the first the cavalry division, and first time that they were using helicopters to deploy, and they literally plopped them in the middle of nowhere. But I was able to read the book. It was actually signed by the author. It was a gift from me, my father-in-law, the colonel, who actually served in 30 plus years in the Army and Special Forces, and so that's a that's a movie that really both of them are Mel Gibson, the Patriot and We Were Soldiers, but he does a great job of portraying the captain. And what I'll say is that they really do a good job in the movie of portraying it the way that it actually was. And so it's a
okay,
really good because some movies like Black Hawk Down and others, you kind of only get one side of things on the viewpoint, whereas We Were Soldiers in particular is very much showing you what it looked like from their point of view, if that
okay.
makes sense.
Yeah. I can appreciate that too. You want to hear the what's really going on, the feelings about it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because I saw that movie before I read the book, and so when you get the book shows you where they are on the battle map, and so when you looking back at what the movie presented, it was very well done in the sense of you see what you're reading, and you see that okay, they didn't like screw it up at all. Like that's exactly what was going on, type of thing. Not like Pearl Harbor with like Josh Hartnett and Ben Affleck, where it's just like all over the place. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
You have a time for one more?
Yeah, hit me.
Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt. Obviously, the late round guy is going to be, everyone's very excited about him. And there's some that actually believe that he's a threat to Brian Robinson's starting job. What would you say to that, Anthony?
I mean, shoot, it comes down to, B Rob, you got to hold on to the rock. It's gonna be his job to lose. You know what I mean? But I
Yeah,
think overall, Krosky Merritt's gonna bring a little extra spice and a little extra spark to their running back room. You need to have a big play guy. And I love having, a bruiser in Brian Robinson and then having a little scat back in Krosky Merritt. The fact that he didn't play ball for a year, that's a good thing, especially at this running back position. You're already trying to count down and say, okay, you only got so many snaps. He
right.
ain't even ball for a year. And then he showed up in the Shrine Bowl, I think it was, and he
Yep.
did a great job. So you get a guy that's hungry, he's ready for this opportunity. If he ends up being the starter, hey, so what? I still think Brian Robinson has a place on this team. When he's playing hungry and runs physically, very few people are going to want to tackle him, right? The Derrick Henry is up there, obviously. He's the king for a reason. But when Brian Robinson is pissed off, I think 2 years ago against Atlanta, the way that he was running over DBs and just physical, that's the B Rob I want. That's the B Rob that needs to be back, regardless of what other running back is in that room. He needs to bring that physical nature because that's his superpower.
Yeah, it was almost like last year was like a UDFA year for Ja'Cory. And speaking to your point about to practice in the snapping of the kicking field goals, he like was at the Hula Bowl just practicing and showed off and did so well, was well prepared for it that the East West Shrine Bowl people actually saw him and said, "Would you like an invite?" He said, "Heck
Mm,
yeah!" And they ended up winning MVP. So, like you talked about earlier, just taking every single um, opportunity and knocking it out of the park. It
yeah,
speaks to your point, Anthony. And
yeah,
obviously, we got a good young man in the sense that he's not over confident in his mind. He's willing to work. Anthony, I can't
absolutely.
thank you enough, man, for fitting me in on this Memorial Day. And I can't thank you enough for doing it. I hope you go and enjoy your day. But before you get out of here, just want to plug your social media handle and your show, brother.
Yeah, man, appreciate it. Y'all can check me out at Rated Armstrong. That's the social media. It's all over there. And Believe in Commanders is a podcast. New co-host now, Scott Jackson. He's down there in the
What?
RVA. Yeah. So we just switched it up. Just availability, right? Availability is tough for everybody, but me and Scott have linked up. Had one episode. It's out there now, and we'll link up again. So new voice over there, but still top action. And then Brian will still be around. Brian will still be around,
Good.
and we're still good. We're still good people. I'm gonna actually see him uh, when I get back in town. I'm going to Atlanta for a conference, so
Okay.
I'm gonna link up with him down there. But he's still good people. We're still friends. We're still friends. But just for the show, we brought in Scott Jackson. He's already covering the team down there in Richmond, so I was glad to have him on, and looking forward to this season with him.
My man, I've been trying to get Scott on for the past 2 weekends, and so now I know why.
There you go. I'll text him and say, hey, give Kyle is good people. Go on the show with him.
He's been on with us before, and look, he's got a great voice, and you have obviously a very good eye for talent, Anthony. But I can't thank you enough, man. Make sure you guys go and check out the Believe in Commanders podcast with Anthony. Enjoy your Sunday, brother.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you. Hey, salute to all the soldiers out there.
Appreciate you, brother.
You have a good one.
You too. All right, everybody. We just spoke with the man, as always, Mr. Anthony Armstrong. He doesn't even need an introduction in what he does or post. He's just so good at what he does. Very personable, very easy to talk to, and obviously very smart in his own right. I thought what he had talked about with Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt was very spot on in the sense that it's Brian Robinson's job to lose. And honestly, you could say that about a lot of the guys in the NFL. That's why they work as hard as they do so they don't lose that opportunity, because in the NFL, things change quickly. As much as you have a coach that loves you, one season, the next season, that guy could be gone, and that comfortability is now gone. So you always got to be ready, and I think Terry McLaurin is probably a really good example of that. Now I am joined by my other co-host, Mr. Michael Hall. What's up, man?
What is going on?
How you doing, man? What do you? So I wanted to ask this question to you. What are some good eats for Memorial Day? Like, what are you going to be grubbing on?
Ooh, that's a good question. Can't go wrong with a burger, obviously. Grilled burgers always fire. What else? Some baked beans. Baked beans would be good today.
Corn on the cob.
It's corn on the cob. It's definitely some grilled corn on the cob is definitely fire. Yeah, I mean, it's basically just actually some ribs would be nice too. That'd be kind of tight, but
Ribs. It takes a while for ribs, but
yeah.
once you do ribs, like they do it well. And speaking of ribs, we are joined by our second guest for this show, Mr. Steve Lim, who also is a fantastic cook himself. If
Yes,
you go by
sir.
the Command Corner tailgate, you go over to Steve, and Steve is more than willing, very hospitable, more than willing to feed you guys. What's up, Steve? Oh, there you are. What's up, man?
Hey, what's going on, fellas?
What's up? What's up?
Not sure if you heard me, but I asked Hall what are some good eats for Memorial Day. What are you cooking up? I know I talked about you and your hospitality and tailgating.
Yeah. So man, I've cooked out Friday, cooked out Saturday, cooking out tonight too. So, yeah, tonight I don't get to do it as much as I like to, but yeah, man, we're keeping it simple. Last night was all cylindricals. So it was sausage and peppers and onions, cheddar brats, and hot dogs for the kids. Tonight, just doing some, I think some burgers, and then maybe I got some short ribs I might cook up. But yeah, man, doing it
See,
good.
Steve is on par with Hall there. 'Cause, Hall said ribs might be good, and he
Yeah,
talked about corn on the cob
I
and
did corn
baked
yesterday.
beans
Yeah, corn
and then
yesterday. For
hamburgers.
sure.
So there you
Yeah.
go. But before we get into like fan questions and everything like that, Steve, I did want to kind of somber this down a little bit. But I wanted to talk about you in particular. You served this country in the same outfit as my grandfather in the 10th Mountain Division. And I wanted to ask you first and foremost, what does Memorial Day mean for you?
For me, it's really about and this is not to play it down or people that don't understand, but yes, it's a time to get together. It's a time to grill out, time to have fun. But for me, it's about remembering those that passed, in the service of our country. And for me in particular, there are a large group of people, particularly in my deployment, my 15-month deployment to Iraq in 2006, 2007, where my unit we lost a lot of people, to include a bunch of kidnapped soldiers. So for me, I really try to focus on those particular group of individuals. And I try to remember them, just throughout the weekend and make sure I keep in focus. It's about remembering them. Of course, want to have fun with family and friends, but, still got to remember the fallen and the sacrifice that they gave in the past.
My man, I wanted to give you a heads up for this question, and
Yep.
if I'm rubbing the wrong, going up the wrong tree, let me know. But I want to go back to that day because you did
Yep.
post about it,
Yep.
the anniversary of it a couple weeks ago,
Yep.
and you talked about the unit and the kidnapping and everything like that. My question to you is, if we can close your eyes, go back to that day, that situation when you found that out? What is, as a soldier, I'm not sure if you and your fellow coworkers kind of felt the same way, but what was going through your mind at that moment?
Well, it was crazy. I had just so in the military, when you're on a deployment like that, you have what's called mid-tour leave or environmental leave, EML. I was literally coming back. I was in Virginia. I did my 2 weeks you get off to be with
Okay.
your family. It was May 2007. I had just got in back to Iraq, stayed in Kuwait for a day, came up to Iraq, and I was just going to check in, say, "Hey guys, I'm back." I was the intelligence officer for the infantry unit I was in. Like, "Hey, you need to stay and let me brief you." My commander briefed me, and that's when I found out. I was like, holy crap. It's about to get real. And so for the next 45 days was like the worst 45 days of my life. I mean, I'm talking hours of sleep each day looking for our fallen soldiers from 431 infantry. I was in 214 infantry, and so we were trying to figure out which way were they taking. Did they go north? Did they go east, southwest? Was it down the Euphrates River? And we were just utilizing all of the intelligence assets we had at our disposal, all of our sources we had, all of the overhead ISR to try to figure out what happened. And it was just madness, madness, madness. But just to hear what happened, it just made me sick for the fact that they did what they did and kidnapped our soldiers, executed them on the spot, and then they weren't found for a couple years. The last two guys weren't found for a couple years later. So it was definitely painstaking on the heart. In my unit, we lost three men looking for the four men who were
Wow.
kidnapped originally. So that's takes another toll as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, sadness all around. But at the end, I feel like we prevailed and made it a little bit better than what it was over there.
Well, I appreciate you for being open about it.
Of
I know it's
course,
not
of
easy.
course. Yeah.
But I just like just kind of for normal, not normal, just everyday idiots like myself, just kind of trying to understand. A lot of people have things to say, but just understanding in that moment what it's like if you're in that situation, it's an entirely different animal, I would
Yeah.
imagine, Steve.
And I will say that, you know, with the bad, you have to take the good. And so a really, I'll say cool thing, but sad at the same time, thing that came out of it towards the tail end about uh, maybe a few weeks after that thing happened in June. So that happened in May 7th, 2007. June 1st, 2007, we had a staff sergeant in my unit, which I was a part of this event. His name was Staff Sergeant Travis Atkins. People were approaching his checkpoint with his four soldiers. He saw the two guys reaching for something under their vest. He tackled one to the ground, notified his other two guys who had the other guy for inspection. But that one insurgent was able to detonate his suicide vest and killed Sergeant Atkins. But the other soldiers were able to shoot and kill and neutralize the other guy. The great thing that happened out of that is we put him in for the Medal of Honor, got denied. He got the Medal of Honor in 2018 after it was all said and done. It took 11 years after in many appeals, but he got the Congressional Medal of Honor. So I got to go to the White House with the family,
Awesome.
meet the president, vice president at the time. It was just a fantastic event. So with the bad comes the good. Sergeant Atkins got the Medal of Honor. So it was actually really cool to be a part of that.
Yeah, and it seems like that's one, as much as it doesn't replace the life, of course, but it's
Right.
just the respect
Absolutely.
of what was done there. And I know that Chapman from the 2001
Yeah.
rescue mission was another one that took forever and didn't happen until I think 2017 or 2018,
Yeah.
maybe 19 as well.
Yeah.
But that's just for some reason they take so long in the political world. But
Absolutely.
to bring this back to football, to kind of help everything out at this point because I didn't help in that regard. But I wanted to ask you guys some fan questions, and we have to go with the Colonel. And the Colonel himself wanted to thank him for his service. I'm sure that he has a lot of similarities with you, Steve. In this,
Yeah.
in
He was
terms-
on last year, or wasn't? Well, I think I was on this last year. Was he on there this last year?
Yeah, 2 years ago, I believe.
2 years
he
ago.
was.
2 years ago. There we go.
He'd be on for every episode if he really wanted to, if I could make time for him, because he watches every single one and he's able to give us insight. But I want to make sure that he's enjoying his time. He's served this country so much that he just needs to enjoy retirement. You know what I
Absolutely.
mean?
Yeah.
But his
Yeah.
question is, Steve. He says, I don't understand the recent criticism of Adam Peters taking a running back until the 7th round. A stout O-line is always a running back's best friend, and we definitely beefed up the trenches. And we do have a pretty solid stable of running backs. Is the criticism unwarranted?
Yeah, I believe it's unwarranted. I mean, I think we all know that there's skepticism about Brian Robinson, his ability, and maybe his vision. Who knows? A lot happened with the line. If you notice, at the beginning of the season, they were running a really good running scheme, like a gap scheme, and then after injuries piled up, B-Rob was doing very well. They stopped running that. You stopped seeing guards pull. You stopped seeing tight ends pull, and it was just straight, straight. And he didn't flourish in that. So yes, there's skepticism about Brian Robinson. We all knew they were going to draft one. Where you got it, I think you can get value at running back at any round. So it didn't matter where they got one. As long as they got one, that means they're looking at the future and trying to address the position. So I think it's unwarranted skepticism, and I agree with the Colonel on that one.
So do I. This question is probably more pointed towards Hall. If anyone follows us on Twitter, him and his boy Brendan Dar were going back and forth today regarding this.
Dar.
But I agree with you because all throughout that draft process, Colonel, I talked about there's so many running backs in this class that you could actually get really good talent later on in the draft. And this is one of those situations where this is a guy who is uber talented, who was projected to be a 3rd to 4th, 5th round prospect before he was taken out of the season and eligibility reasons for college football. So this isn't like it's a 7th rounder based on what he was able to in production based on his last year. This is him being a 7th rounder because he didn't play. And so if he did play, his projection might have been actually a lot sooner than that. And so you have to say that that's great value for what Washington was willing to get. And on top of that, this is a cat who worked his ass off to get his opportunity, in any opportunity that showcased throughout that season. He didn't miss the film sessions. He balled out at the Hula Bowl. He then went to the East West Shrine Bowl, won MVP, which speaks to you in saying that even when he wasn't in the game playing, he was still working his ass off, ready for an opportunity to prove himself. And so you can say concretely, they did a very good job in the 7th. That's what you want in the 7th round. That's the perfect kind of scenario you want for a 7th rounder, in the sense that you're not putting all that much asset into it, but this could be a off the roof, through the roof type of production for you. And so the criticism is unwarranted, because as much as everyone wants to get the big name guys, the Travion Hendersons and the Giddens of the world, there's still value in the draft. And I think they did a really good job in identifying the kind of talent they wanted, the kind of player and person that they wanted. And I think they knocked it out of the park. Look, people are going to complain because it's one of those money positions, and it's what gets a lot of the limelight, a lot of the spotlight, a lot of people talking, and just let the production talk for itself.
Yeah, when they clearly they value protecting your franchise quarterback
Right.
over a running back in the 1st round. So I'm not mad at Josh Connolly Jr. pick at all, vice versa running back. So
No, not at all. And I've been, as a former offensive line, I've said this so many times in this show, I put more stock into in the trenches more so than running back. As much as I respect Saquon Barkley, if it wasn't for that Eagles O-line, you'd probably be seeing something similar to that Giants production that he had. And it's not saying that was bad, but just in the sense of saying that it really went over the top when he went to the Eagles based on that O-line. And that's just two greats meeting itself. What about you all?
Yeah, well, contrary to what Kyle thinks, I actually do think it is unwarranted, because my whole thing was like I knew they were going to draft one in the 1st round, but I think most fans were looking at it from the perspective of, obviously there's no running backs under contract after this year. So I think they wanted a guy that was going to add some explosion to the offense, like outside of Jaden Daniels, because obviously he was the only one really creating explosive runs for the offense last year. Austin Eckler had a couple here and there, but obviously with concussions and the injuries kind of piling up, those kind of got cut down. And then, like you said, obviously the offensive line did have something to do with it. So that kind of didn't really help out Brian Robinson and the rest of the running backs as well. My only pushback would be that even when the line was healthy, he wasn't really creating those crazy explosive runs, but he was never really an explosive runner anyway. So like that was the whole kind of, I think that's why fans were kind of like, not really like mad or pushing back, like kind of pushing back on the fact of, hey, we need a running back, we need an explosive running back, whatever the fact may be. But again, like you said, I actually like Crockett Barrett. I think that he can be that kind of explosive back. And I think that, like you said, he only went into the 7th round because the NCAA made him ineligible for some stupid, ridiculous reason. So he would have went in like the 3rd, 4th, or the 4th, 5th round, something like that. And on top of that, I feel like if they would have like traded back in the 2nd round instead of drafted Trey Amos, recouped a little bit more picks, then yes, you would have probably saw a mid-round running back get taken. But like you said, at the end of the day, we kind of did get a mid-round running back because he was projected to go in the middle rounds. It was just the whole ineligible thing, and that kind of tanked his draft stock. So yeah, I think at the end of the day, would it have been like cool to have like a Trevion Henderson or one of those like explosive backs that were going in the first, second, third rounds? Yes. But to you guys' point, if the offensive line can stay healthy, they have more depth now, and they can get more push up front, it will help out Brian Robinson. It'll help out Jaden Daniels, who's already explosive himself. And if Crockett Merritt can get on the field and get touches, we've seen, for going back to New Mexico as highlights, he can take it to the house from anywhere on the field. So I do think that the criticism is unwarranted. And I do think that, and until obviously if Crockett Merritt doesn't really pan out, then you can revisit this thing, but that'll be hindsight. But at the end of the day, I do think that they still got a running back, and he could potentially be the running back of the future.
Yeah, which is funny because the Raiders drafted Ashton Genty, right? And I talked to Kevin Walsh, who's been on this show before, big friend of ours, and asked him if he was going to that Raiders game, and his response was, "No, I'm not going to go to the game to see you guys beat us by 40."
You know what's funny? I
was
asked
like,
him the
"Come on,
same.
man."
I asked him the same thing. I was like, "Yo," when the schedule came out, I was like, "Yo, Cracky was good." Like, he's like, "Man." First thing he had to start like talking crap. Like,
He
"Oh,
doesn't
da,
like
da."
it when we refer to him as Cracky on here.
I know. Sorry. When I told Kevin, like, "Yo, you going to the game?" He took a couple jabs, like da 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 da, and of course, took a couple jabs back. And then finally, he admitted, he was like, "Look, man, I don't want to spend $200 to go see my team's ass get whooped again, man. I went there last time; it wasn't fun." It's like, we did whip your ass last time. You're right. So I get that. So
Yeah.
he'll
Now,
probably end up
I
doing
wouldn't have gotten mad if they had gotten Cam Skatabo, Byshell Tootin, or Caleb Johnson. Those are three guys I really, really liked, but I wouldn't have gotten mad at any of those guys. So, but Krosky Merritt, Bill, they call him Bill, right?
Yep.
I think he's going to be good for us in the scheme we're trying to run.
And you're absolutely right. And the one thing about B-Rob is he is a power back, and we have to imagine in the Charles Leno days, the offensive line, the way Rivera built it, was based on finesse. It wasn't power. And so you're asking a power back to be running behind a finesse kind of offensive line, and obviously you're going to have some issues there. But that's why their recent moves are getting badass, getting Connerly, hopefully when Cosme comes back, and then Tunsil kind of builds up that power running game. And so I think that we're going to see a little bit more of Brian Robinson this year. But before I get into the Colonel's next
I will
question,
say, hold on, one last point. It's like a copycat league. So like my whole, like, not even just my point, but other people's point was, if you look at, I'm not even going to put the Lions in that, or the Eagles in that, because like you said, their offensive line is just like beyond like
right?
ridiculous. So like adding a guy like Saquon Barkley is going to take it to the next level. But if you look at a team like the Lions, who obviously they built their offensive line up, and then they added Jahmyr Gibbs, who's an explosive back, but then they added David Montgomery, kind of like
Correct.
that Sonic and Knuckles type of thing.
1-2.
Yes.
So I think that was the reason why fans were kind of like looking at AP like, hey, like we could have had that Sonic and Knuckles type of thing, because I do think the offensive line is not the Lions, but it's getting better, and it's like definitely improved. So, but at the end of the day, like you said, Crockett Merritt could actually be that guy. We just got to see how he pans out once he gets to training camp and everything.
Yeah, you got to let that offensive line be established first and foremost, which is what the Lions did before they added that. Same thing with the Eagles with Saquon Barkley. But before we get into the Colonel's question, I asked this question to Anthony Armstrong. Dan Quinn talked to the Salisbury graduates and said, find your superpower. So, Steve, I want to ask you, what's your superpower, sir?
My superpower, I believe personally is resiliency. Been through a lot of crazy things in my life. I feel like I've always maintained a positive attitude despite the conditions, good, bad, and different. So I think my superpower is resiliency and trying to reflect that resiliency onto others. When things are down, somebody always has it worse, man. We just got to keep in perspective. So I think resiliency is mine.
Yeah, I would definitely co-sign with that. I will say that for me, just from outsider looking in, like definitely Steve has that kind of light where whenever you talk to him, very not bubbly, but just you can tell very open, and it's very easy to talk to them. I couldn't say the same for myself, right? But what about you, Hall?
I would say my superpower would be like just like a chill person that you can just like what's it called when you like can just like people just like tell you anything, like they just come to you like and just like can talk to you about anything type
You're
of
a
thing.
confidant.
Yeah, like there's a confidant where I'm just like, for some reason people just always tell me like their deepest darkest secrets and like what they got going on in their lives, and I feel like I just try to, be positive, give them some type of like positive feedback and whatnot. But yeah, I just feel like just having a listening ear at all times is my superpower. Just taking in people's uh,
I would say you're
worries and anxieties, and then just kind of just taking them in and then getting them off their chest.
personally, I would say your superpower is being able to avoid any insults or jokes being because literally nobody makes jokes. It's weird. Even in our group chat, even on here, like nobody just makes fun of Hall for some reason. It's just not somebody you can make fun of. I don't get it, but look, man, it's your super.
Belt the
Yeah.
ass. No, I'm just
Hey,
joking.
listening is a tough skill because you got to work on it every day. A lot of people listen to respond. They're just waiting for you to finish so they can talk. A lot of people don't listen to understand. So that is a very commendable skill. Kyle, what's yours?
My superpower.
Yeah.
Um, I think I honestly, if not to fool myself, I think that my superpower is helping others find their superpower. To be honest with you, and that's just if that's my purpose on this earth, that's cool with me, of course. And
An
that,
enabler.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's exactly what I try to do and try to help with others because I talked to Deuce a long time ago and he talked about saying that he was like trying to be like me and I know he was joking but I was like dude but seriously though like you can be better though like you could do 10 times more than I've ever done and you can see that from Deuce right now in the community that he's
Yeah.
developed right and that's why I do put a lot of stock into that so if I were to say anything it's helping others find their superpower. I wasn't expecting you to ask me that to be honest with you.
Nice. Hey, did good under pressure. So
My man. Next question I have for you, Hall. I'll go to you first. What from the Colonel? What part of the Commanders' game will be most improved in the 2025 season? Personally, I think it will be our defensive secondary, especially if Lattimore recovers from injury and understands our schemes, and if we integrate Trey Amos as a starter on the outside.
Yeah, I would say that's definitely going to be better. Hopefully, like obviously on paper, you could say they're definitely going to be better. Um, but I would say that I just think the offensive trenches, like we'll see about the
Yeah.
defensive side of the ball, but I would say the offensive line, the trenches, just all the depth that they added through free agency. Obviously, they just drafted Connerly. When we get Sam Cosmi back, I think that starting five is going to be one of the better starting fives in the league. You're going to move Brandon Coleman around, so I do think that the offensive trenches are going to be much improved, like pending crazy injuries going forward, but much improved in 2025 and just going back to that Lions game, you saw what Jaden Daniels did when he had time in the pocket and there was not really a rush getting after him. He was slicing and dicing that defense up. So I think that that's going to help out the passing game and the running game as well for the whole offense.
I think it's going to be turnovers, and it evident by what Joe Witt's history with defenses, coaching, being able to generate turnovers wherever he went. He had that press conference last season talk about I've got every team I've been on, have coached on, has produced turnovers. I will not have this be the one situation that doesn't produce that. And so I think in the second year of that, I think we're really going to see some more turnovers under Joe Witt, especially with how late in the season those turnovers actually started generating. So I think that that is going to transition into year two. And as much as that was something that we were looking for more of in 2024, I think in 2025 it's going to be a plethora of it. What about you, Steve?
yeah, I would love to say something on defense. I'm not convinced that it's gotten significantly better.
Okay.
With Trey Amos and Kane Madron, I don't know what he's going to do, but like others said, and Will Harris is going to help. But I'm just not feeling as strong as the defense is going to get better. But I do feel the offense. I better as in the offense is going to get better. I'll talk about the trenches. I think the offense is going to get better it's not going to be all on the shoulders of Jaden Daniels like it was last year. How many times did Jaden single-handedly will us to a first down, to a victory, to this and that? With the additions of, Debo Samuel, and Bill, Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt, and Laramie Tunsil and Josh Conner. I feel Jaden's not going to have the world on his shoulders, so I think the offense will be much more efficient, much more smoother. I don't know how much smoother it can get, but I feel the offense will be much more efficient, and Jaden won't have the pressure on his shoulders like he did last year. Hopefully, the defense comes around, but I'm just not convinced. I'd say the offense will improve more so than the defense.
Yeah, and it's funny because as much as the butt pumping gets put out there into the spotlight of what the Eagles are able to do, of course, and but Washington led the league. I think it was an 88% clip on third and fourth and shorts last season. And somebody, I think it was Jaden's puppy or whatever on Twitter said, we don't need that to convert those. And he's absolutely right about it. The stats back that up. It just shows what he was able to, in this offense was able to do last year. Now, Steve, our next question is from Command D's Nuts. Thank you, Mike. He asks, "Happy Sunday, y'all. I'm seeing rumors about Washington trading for Ramsey. Do you think we need him? And if so, what's that say about Lattimore if it's true?"
Yeah, you want me to go first?
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't looked at how many draft picks we have in 2026.
5.
Five. Okay, 2 years in a row with 5. So there's not a lot of capital.
I think we only have like a first, a fourth, and then a 5, 6, 7. I think if that's right.
Something like that. I know the second went with the Tunzel trade, so I think we might have like a first and a third,
the third
maybe.
for Debo. The third went for Debo.
So I don't know.
No, we gave a fifth for Debo.
Then
Yeah, it was.
I know that we're without the second and third. I know that for a fact.
I, at this point, I think you just got to roll with that. You don't have much draft capital, and you'll be in year 3 of Dan Quinn next year. You're going to need building blocks, and unless it's going to be a player for player, and then maybe a late round pick swap, that would be the only way I would do it. Jalen Ramsey's good talent. I know he's on the other side of 30, but on the surface, I would say no. You got to keep the draft capital unless you can do a player for player swap picks. I'm not sure who that player would be. I don't know who's on Miami.
Yeah.
Jalen Ramsey was a Miami guy. I'm not sure what their needs are, but that's the only way I would do it.
I agree with you. Maybe Marcus Mariota could be one guy. That could be the swap. But honestly, the pay is the big issue here. He's got a hefty contract. And on top of that, there's been talks about him possibly transitioning to safety. And if he's open to that, then yeah, I'm willing to. And if Miami wants to eat that contract, then yeah, let's talk about it. But like Steve said, it's the compensation is going to be something that needs to be addressed. And as much as you would like to just add talent to this team and trying to be able to make a Super Bowl run, we also have to be realistic about the future and continuing to replenish things because it's hard to be able to add youthful talent to this team if you are giving them away, right? But do we need him? I don't find that to be true. You would want him in the sense of just trying to making sure that you're really built in that back end. But is it really a thing where you're going to put all the chips in, so to speak, to be able to acquire him? No, not for me personally.
Yeah, just with the amount of draft picks we have next year, I don't think that's going to be a thing. And also, I think it's either June 1st or July 1st, one of those two. The Dolphins can cut him and save like a bunch of money in their cap. So giving up a draft pick for someone that's probably eventually going to get cut in June 1st or July 1st.
Good job.
Probably would not be the smartest thing to do. I don't think Adam Peters is anyone from the past regimes that would be like, hey, fancy name, let's go get that guy and give up draft picks. So yeah, and at the end of the day, like we have Lattimore. Hopefully he can get back healthy, get affiliated into the scheme like Steve was talking about, and have a good 2025 season. We just drafted Amos. We got Noah I. Obviously, we still got Mikey. So it almost goes to the point of like, even if he did come here, and I know there's been talk about moving to safety, and that would be great because I do think he would be a great free safety. But at the end of the day, how is the rotation really going to go? Because if he wants to play cornerback, like who's going to be the odd man out? And you got to, and that, like you said, like it'll be year 3. You got to keep building the foundation. Like as much as it would be like a move to signal to the fan base, like, hey, we're going all in. Like we're going to try to make a run for the Super Bowl again. I think it would not be like the smartest thing to do just because of the draft picks. And like Steve said, going into year 3, like we only have maybe like a handful of young guys that are really like the foundation of this team. So we got to kind of keep building that foundation up. And yeah, going back to, like I said, the whole cut thing, like I don't think it would be like the most efficient move to give up draft picks for a guy that's probably going to get cut at some point.
Very well done, sir. That was a very good explanation from you. Next question we have is from Arch Hall. The Terry deal will get done. How many years will it be for?
So I know I was listening to like 106 the other day, and Linnell was on there. He made up a good point. He was like, you got to look at the DK Metcalf contract up in Pittsburgh. They're in the same draft class. You can clearly make the case that Terry's better than DK Metcalf. And DK's got 4 years, whatever it was. I forget how how many million it was, but pretty much 32 million a year with like 60 or whatever it was, 70 guaranteed. So that's probably going to be the baseline of like maybe Terry takes like a little bit of a cut. I know he took a little bit of a cut last contract. So maybe he takes a little bit of a cut, hometown discount to kind of help the team out a little bit more. But yeah, I would look at that DK Metcalf contract and say I give him 4 years, probably like 32, 33 million. And hopefully he accepts that. And that would be I feel like that would be a good contract for Terry to accept. And you can look at the guaranteed money and however much it may be, but you could probably slot him in behind like a top 5 to 7, like guaranteed type of money thing. So yeah, that would be kind of where I would start with it.
Yeah, for me personally, I think it should be 5 years. And the reason I say that is I want Terry McLaurin to only play for one professional team in his professional career in the NFL. That's somebody that has been through the trenches, has worked his ass off, hasn't been a diva, even when his contract negotiations were going down. And that is the sort of player that I think is Washington through and through. Very under the radar, works his ass off, is not a headache, isn't somebody that is a bad role model at all. He just continues to show up and work hard. And that's somebody that I want to have here for the long term. And so that 5 year would be able to get you in a relative place with his age that he would be reluctant to leave. I don't want to see McLaurin on another jersey.
Yeah, and I would agree with both you guys. 4 years, 5 years, it doesn't matter. But I would like kind of one up Hall just a little bit because DK was getting 33 uh, adjusted annual AAV. CD's at 34. So I'd say pocket it right between there. And CD's number three.
$1 more.
Yeah, like Wheel of Fortune or
Right.
Price is Right style. CD's 34, DK's 33. So somewhere in there, 4 or 5 years, you can do that 5th year, maybe a void option or team option. Let's be honest, on the last year of the deal, they all backload the money anyways. But you can get creative, give him signing bonuses, give him workout bonuses, and you can still get to that number with a lower cap hit. But I'm with you guys. He's got to retire in the Burgundy and Gold. There's no other team. And then just do 1 year deals after that.
I was going to say, even
you
if
know
they
what I
get to
mean?
the end of his contract, just keep giving him 1 year deals until
I
he
think,
says until he wants to call
yeah.
it quits.
I think Thielen is like the oldest guy, the receiver in the league. Something he's like 35, I don't know, 34, 35.
Right.
But I'm with you. He should play for nobody else. But give him top 4, top 5 money. He look what happens when you have a quarterback. It just took him how many years to get to that point.
Right.
But so
He deserves it. And I thought it was really funny. I heard the Devontae Adams on that podcast talking
Oh.
about the milk check thing, saying that
Yeah.
whenever he goes up against a white corner, he says milk check to the quarterback. My first thought was, how often does that happen?
I was just literally
Like that happened one time and you're talking about it on a podcast? You
he's
know?
playing the Eagles,
Right.
and they're everywhere.
Come on, man.
Maybe he was talking about in college because he did play for like Fresno State. So you
Oh,
got to
okay.
imagine like
Oh, was
there ain't that many like
Nice.
decent cornerbacks out at Fresno State playing in that conference back in the day. So
There you
Yeah.
go. That's your superpowers, being able to break things down for me. Oh, that's what your
And Terry
superpower is.
Terry has all those intangibles that it's hard to put money on. It's hard to put value on. His intensity, his leadership, just those locker room guys. I was talking with Lake Lewis on our show last week. Lake made a good point. Terry is the person you can point to on the team that you can compare everyone else to as a standard. Like, I want you to be like this guy
Yeah.
with work ethic, with attitude, and that's you can't put a value on that.
No, you
yeah,
can't.
and you can't like talk about culture, brotherhood, like commander tag, da 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 da,
Right.
and then be like, yeah, like Terry's the ultimate commander, franchise guy, we love him, but we're not gonna pay him that much. So like,
Right.
so it's
Right.
gonna send a bad message to the locker room. So it's gonna get done, and I think that he will be here for the end of his career.
Yeah, and especially after you traded for Debo and that deal.
And
that you-
Debo's making more money than him right now, so
right,
it's like
and that's
that has
why
to
it
get
makes
done.
a lot of sense to pay him to be able to say that culture hasn't changed, right? Because there is that kind of not theological, but just difference in what has been preached, right? And paying Terry would be able to squash that. Now, the next question is actually a funny one because Deluxe went to an event last night where it was a little people wrestling match, pro wrestling match, and he showed us a video. It's actually really impressive. The dude started doing 2-armed push-ups on the ropes and then fell down and did a belly flop on his opponent on the ground, which is incredibly impressive. But his question is, Steve, what's the craziest sporting event you have attended? Mine was a figure 8 demolition derby.
For me, I would have to say Gen 1 XFL. So this
Okay.
was like 2001, maybe '02. If you remember the
You hate
kickoff,
me.
he hate me, Rod Smart. The kickoff was two dudes literally running full force at each other and just pow.
Yeah.
That's probably the craziest thing that I've seen that personally, I haven't been to any other obscure sports. So for me, that's probably my number one.
Yeah, I'm going to answer for Reed because I know Reed would say this, that it was that time he went to Mexico for that cockfighting competition. But he came with a chicken and he was surprised nobody else brought one. Honestly, I couldn't tell you a crazy one. Like I've seen like demolition derbies and stuff like that, but craziest live sporting events, I really don't. That's not like an area where I'm very creative or do funny stuff in. I don't really have a good one there. I'm boring in that regard. What about you, Hall?
Yeah, I haven't really been to any like crazy sporting events. If you
I
want to
mean,
call like
indoor soccer. I'll say indoor soccer. That's
if
just
you want to
random.
call like rec league, like 8 to 9 year old basketball, that was pretty crazy because the parents are acting like they're like professionals in like AAU, and that was ridiculous.
AU.
But
Yeah,
that's as crazy as I've been to.
I would also say my son's flag football games. 4-year-olds trying to play flag football, and I'm helping coaching that. And my goodness, is it funny? They tried having us do forward passes last week, and me and the other coach were like, I don't know how this is gonna happen, but it's a learning process. We'll see how it goes. Last one that we have, boys. This one is from our boy Meest. Thank you, Meest. It's good to hear from you, brother. He said, my apologies if this question has been asked recently. But, Steve, name one surprise cut and one surprise make on offense and defense. If you just want to pick one
Ooh.
offense or defense, that's
Su-
okay.
Surprise cut, surprise make. Oof. Um, Surprise make, I think, is going to be Chris Rodriguez.
Okay.
I think, he's buried down on that running back depth chart, and we just re-signed him in the off season. I think he's going to make this team just because of the way every time he gets the opportunity, he comes through. And so I like what he has to offer. Surprise cut. Yeah. This one's tough, man. You have to come back to me on this one. I don't think I can spit this one. I have to think about this one for a minute.
I'll have one for both. For offense, I'll say the surprise cut could be Austin Eckler, just given the fact of I know it's a steady, great room. I have a lot of respect for Austin, but just giving respect to the question, that would be a surprise cut because I have a lot of respect for him. But just the fact that they did add the rookie in the 7th round, and given with how they feel about that running back room and bringing the guys back and their kind of relationship, maybe that's something based on the injury history, right? And then defensively, I'll say Marshawn Lattimore, to be honest.
Last year of his deal, right?
Yep.
I'm not gonna say Lattimore because they could have got out of the deal in this before
I
they even went to
understand.
this.
I'm just
But yeah,
answering
no,
the
I mean
question.
he has a bad training camp. It could definitely be like a thing. Um, and it's not really like a surprise, but he was a contributor last year and kind of burst on the scene out of nowhere. But Jeremy McNichols, I think, is going to be the odd man out in the running back room, just because I think they value the pass catching abilities that Austin Eckler brings. He obviously can do the kickoff as well, so I think he makes it, and Jeremy McNichols gets cut, but then they probably bring him back to like the practice squad. And surprise make, I would
I didn't
say,
give one.
surprise make. I'll go to the tight end room and I'll say, I don't even think, is Yankov still there?
Yeah.
He's
Yeah,
still
I'd say
here.
Colson Yankov just because I think that tight end room is kind of depth wise. You got Zach Ertz, Ben Sinnott, and
Okay.
Bates, obviously, but I think that they like Yankov and he'll be the practice squad tight end.
I'll do. I didn't answer the make, but I'll say either Taylor or Robert McDaniel. I think one of those two guys could be one
Are
of the
they going? Are they
surprises.
getting invited to training camp? Or we don't know yet.
I don't think that anyone has announced anything yet. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I don't think
I'm not
so.
sure.
So for my surprise cut, this is gonna be surprise. I'm gonna say Noah Brown.
Jaden Daniels.
Noah Brown.
Ooh.
And I was trying to, you put it in perspective. Surprise, right? We
Right.
just re-signed him to a 1-year deal. Chump change. I don't even know what it is. 3 something, 2 something. You got Debo, you got Terry, you got Luke. You still have KJ. You still, I forget who else is out there.
Michael Gallup,
Yeah, Gallup. You got there's
Jeremy
one.
Lane just drafted,
Yes, Jalen Lane.
or
So
Jalen Lane, yeah.
there's a
KJ Osborne.
KJ Osborne. So, in the theme of the question, the spirit of the question, I'll say no Brown.
Yes, and to put the caveat in there, we're just answering the question. None of us want to see these guys go on or think they're bad. We just have to answer the question.
Breaking news: Kyle hates Marshawn.
Jaden Daniels.
Definition of it. Right. I'm sure there's somebody could be commenting on YouTube like Marshawn Lattimore was hurt last year. Like, I know. I'm just saying. Surprise. It would be a surprise, would it not be?
Yeah.
But I can't thank you guys enough for joining me, of course. Steve, thank you for your service, brother.
Appreciate
God
man.
gives his hardest battles to his toughest soldiers, so to speak. And obviously you have been a pillar of that and being able to keep up with your upbeat attitude. And I'm sure anybody that talks to you wouldn't be able to say that you've dealt with some of the things you've had to see and feel and deal with, right? But, it just speaks to the man you are and who you've been growing into being. But I know you're doing a great job with the Command This podcast with Dev, of course. And make sure you guys, if you haven't yet, I'm sure you have, just go subscribe, follow them. Steve is phenomenal. He's a great host at what they do, and they have a very structured and well done show. We've been on that before. But Steve, before we get out of here, just want to plug your show again.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, Command This podcast on all the socials, Facebook, Instagram, a little bit on Instagram, on X, and on YouTube. Yeah, Command This podcast. Check us out. Shows Monday and Thursday live streams. So that's what we're doing.
And make sure you guys go and follow that. It's really funny. It's a really good show. Guys, I can't thank you enough. You made it this far. You're a freaking champion. Answer in the comments. Love to hear what you think your superpower is. I wish I could tell you what I said Reed's superpower is going to be, but that's not for this episode. That's for another time. But we'll see you guys again next week, possibly on Wednesday or later, depending on if I'm helping out at church on Wednesday night. All right, everybody. I'm Kyle.
I'm Hall.
I'm Steve.
There you go. My man. All right, we'll see you guys again next week. Have a great week. Thank you to everyone who sacrificed for this country. Appreciate you all. Love you guys. Thank you very much. Washington football. Woo!
Peace.
What's up, everyone? This is Kyle from the Burgundy Zone. We are releasing our own merch to support the show. If you want to rock the Burgundy Zone logo or you want to see Reed's face on your shirt, we got it. We're starting with t-shirts, hoodies, and zip-up. So if you're a fan of the show, make sure you snag one before they are gone. Check out the link in our bio on Instagram, or you can find the link in the description of the video. Thanks again for all your support. Until next time.